Welcome to We Can Talk About That, a Christos Community Church podcast that takes a closer look at interesting or challenging topics. Welcome to the fourth episode of We Can Talk About That. This is Alex Villasana, pastor of Christos Community Church, and I am Matt McNair, elder at Christos Community Church. Today's topic comes actually straight from, some of our recent sermon series. We just completed a sermon series on the book of Revelation, which clearly talks about the end times. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. So Alex, do you have any kind of opening thoughts before we dive into some of our questions?
Well, I will go with what you say just now. I don't think that many people, maybe a lot of people would disagree with us when we say the book of Revelation clearly talks about the end of time, you know, with all the allegories and all the imagery. But I do agree with you. It is clear if you look at it in the right context and the right scope, it was meant to be clear for the church. So I'll say there is enough information in Scripture to have a good idea about the end times.
All right. So what are some of the main views that are out there regarding the end times?
There is, off the top of my head, at least 4 different views about how things are going to happen at the end. Many of them agree. I'm going to say, let me begin with what they agree. They agree about the final judgment. They agree on the second coming. They agree that there will be a time where time is going to end, that this is the end of this creation, and we have a new earth, a new heaven. We agree on that. But then the main differences that we have is it's about the millennium, you know, that period of time that Revelation talks about, 1,000 years. That is one of the main debates. What does that mean? Is it really 1,000 years? It's something else. The other point of contention is what's going to happen with the church through what is called the Great Tribulation. Some views say the church is going to be taking, what is called the rapture before the Great Tribulation. Others say it's going to happen in the middle. There's a reference to 3.5 years. So no, the church is going to go through half of it. And then yet other theologians say, no, the church is going to actually be here through the whole length of the Great Tribulation. So what the millennium means and where the church is going to be taken to heaven, those are the 2 big issues among all the 4 or 5 different views that there are about the end times. In our denomination, in the Presbyterian Church in America, we don't have an official position. In terms of this is the way it's going to happen. Similarly to our position with Genesis about the days of creation, are those 7 days or those 7 seasons, we have latitude in our denomination for both views. The main thing in Genesis is that we must assert that God created everything out of nothing. That's the main thing. And at the end, the main thing is that there's a time he's coming back and he wins at the end. Those are the points that matter. All the other details are important, but they are not issues for salvation, as we say.
Right. So that's very interesting, and I know that we could probably dive very deep into each of those particular questions, which if our listeners want to hear about that, just let us know.
Absolutely.
Why do you think that we should care about the end times? You just said that the Presbyterian Church in America doesn't have a particular official viewpoint. It's not a salvation kind of thing. So why do you think we should care? How would it affect our daily life?
I think that the problem with disregarding the end times is that we may have the the wrong view of this life. So, my opinion, pastoral opinion, theological opinion, is that if we are going to have a full, complete, even delightful life here now, we must consider the end. If we don't consider the end, then we're not going to appreciate the here and now. I see that as connected, as directly connected, to the point that we should not separate those two. So if I'm concerned about, for instance, as a believer, I'm concerned about my spiritual formation, my discipleship. I'm concerned about the spiritual formation of my children. If I want to be faithfully engaged in this spiritual formation now, I must consider the end times, because they're coming. I mean, it's coming. Now, we may say, God wins at the end, really, who cares? But again, if we don't pay attention to the fact that there are some details for the church in God's word, then we're not being good stewards of what we have. Moses said that in the Old Testament. He said, or God said through Moses, that God has revealed things for us, and those are for us and our children. And it's very, I love that. The revealed things of God are for us and our children. The hidden things belong to God. Those are not ours. So there is a sense of responsibility, on our part, to know as much as we can from Scripture. So it goes back to be a faithful servant, a faithful steward of what we have. And then more specifically, I think if we don't consider the end times, we may fall into idolatry, maybe pride. When we see all the progress that we have made,
Sure.
all the things that we have, particularly in our country, we may get the wrong impression that, oh, look at all the things that we have accomplished. Well, all these things are going to pass away. This is not permanent, and we may get the impression that it's permanent. So again, there is this sense of, it's incomplete. The way I live my life is incomplete unless I consider that eternity is coming and the way it's coming.
Yeah. I think that's really good. Some people's views on the end times can lead to logical extremes, and obviously maybe some dangerous potential pitfalls. So what do you see those as being, and how can we avoid those?
I will summarize those extreme views, I'm going to call them, in two camps. One is the camp that say we must remove ourselves from society. That the end is coming, therefore, we need to sell everything, give everything away, buy some acres in North Georgia, build a bunker, and wait for the Lord.
Yeah, just detach ourselves from society.
Yeah, completely removed. We build our own little self-sustained, community, and we just wait for the Lord to come. We don't want to be polluted by society. So that's one extreme that I see. The other extreme that I see is when hate is promoted. Like for instance, because I know I'm secure, I know I'm going to heaven, then it's easy for me to judge others. And you're not going to heaven, you're going to get it on the judgment day. I'm not, you're evil, I'm not. And then there's this, hate is what comes to mind. So those extremes, and there are different variants of those two extremes, but I think we can group misguiding views of end times in those two camps. The ones that say we must be removed from society, and the others, no, we must condemn society, talk in this way that lacks compassion, almost like, hey, I'm God's finger, to judge everyone. And no, that should not be the case.
Yeah. So this might be almost too detailed for us to get into, but like how do people end up in those extremes? You know, what kind of things do we need to avoid?
That's a very good question, because I believe also, and my personal experience, of course, so my answer is going to be limited. But what I have experienced, what I have seen, is that either one resonates with something that is already in your heart. It's already in your heart. That seed for either extreme is already there. So we must start with our own heart. We have to be careful.
Yeah.
We have to check and check our own heart, and look for any any seed, any the beginning of hate, or the beginning of what is said. When you are just dissatisfied to the extreme with what's happening in life.
Right.
Bitterness is the word that I was looking for. Like that you're
Mm.
bitter, and so definitely we need to check our heart. And very specifically, let me say, if we are not moved to compassion by whatever point of view whatever view we hold for the end times, if we're not moved to compassion, I will say there's a problem with that view.
Yeah.
It's a serious problem. If you are very happy because people are going to be judged by God, there is an issue there.
Okay.
You have to
Yeah.
check your heart.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So how do you like you love science, and I do as well, and we oftentimes geek out talking about space and astronomy and all that kind of business. So
Yes.
how do you feel like this the kind of the biblical understanding of the end times jives with science's understanding of the universe and the direction it's headed?
And that's a great question, and I feel at the same time I feel happy that we can talk about these issues. And then I just watched a video on YouTube of a preacher that was talking about astronomy. Oh my goodness, he got so many things wrong that it made me feel bad. Like I probably shouldn't talk about astronomy or science. He was going in the complete wrong direction. He was saying something like, in the sky, God is giving us a message about the future. And I'm like, no, there's anyway, let me go back to your question. Honestly, I do believe there is a lot of confirmation in science about both creation and the way things are going to end. Of course, the science at this point, they don't know exactly how things are going to end. It's all about mass, right, and gravity, and how much mass we have, and in what direction is the universe, if the universe is expanding or not, all those things. So bottom line, without going too much into physics, every time I read articles on Scientific American and other scientific publications, I do get confirmation that there seems to be there's a limit. Me looking at creation, there's a design, and a design with a purpose. So I don't see any conflict really. And let me just be clear or clarify the point. I'm not biased in that regard. Like, I listen to what scientists and science has to say, and then I apply the scientific method and try to understand, and I see the confirmation. It's not like I'm trying to find a what is the term? Self-fulfillment prophecy or something like that. It's
Sure.
not like that. But there's a lot in science, creation, what we know about the universe, that confirms God's plan for us. Absolutely.
Yeah, I see that kind of the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously anytime like there's natural disasters or things like that, people bring up, it's the sign of the end times, all that kind of business.
Yes.
And of course, we are living in this prolonged period of a pandemic. So how do you I don't know, like how do we think about the end times
Yes.
through this period of history in particular?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I am so very glad because it is very common when something happens to jump right away into either, it's God's judgment, or it's a sign, the Lord's coming tomorrow, which I do believe that He's coming, not tomorrow, I don't know when, but very, very
But
soon.
we're a day closer. Yeah.
We are a day closer, that's for sure. But it's very interesting to me, because again, it speaks, that attitude, my opinion, speaks about the nature of our heart. What is in our heart? One is we like to show others that we know more than others. Like if I can find a way to connect, the pandemic to Revelation 17 in a fresh new way, it means that I'm special. It means that God's speaking to me. So it plays into that desire that we have as humans to show that I am better, I know more, I'm special. So that's the first problem. But also, and more now, more so in this age, because we have access to so much information. It's that necessity, I guess, that we have of more details, of knowing more, of keep digging and digging and digging, even if it's not leading us to anything new. I'll give you an example. Going back to physics, I guess. CERN, CERN, the organization in Europe that built this particle accelerator, the strongest, the biggest, huge instrument, really scientific instrument, and it discovered what is called God's particle,
Mm-hmm.
right? I cannot pronounce it. I can see the words, but I cannot pronounce it. Higgs boson. I cannot pronounce it. Anyway, so they discovered this particle. Boom, cool. But people didn't know what will happen when they turn on the machine, and the machine is huge. It's several kilometers. It's a big circle. So people didn't know, like, what is going to happen? We don't know. And some scientists, I guess, they say, well, if we turn the machine on, we're going to create this black hole, mini black hole. It's going to consume the whole Earth. Blah 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 blah. But then some preachers connected that experiment with what we just went through at Revelation chapter 9, when the abyss is open and then the demons come out. And now they're saying, oh no, if we turn on the machine, we're going to open this abyss and demons are going to come out. I'm like, no, that's not the way things work. and they were saying that we should not turn on the machine, as if the end times could be prevented by our actions. So
or triggered
all
by
these,
our actions, even.
what I see, Matt, in the way we react. Yeah, and it's like God is waiting for us. Like, I hope they turn that machine on. I have a plan. I have a schedule. I hope they they got the memo. And all these put us at the center. We are the ones that is controlling this, and not God. So
Right.
that's my problem when I see the church or us react in this way. Like, oh, it has to be judgment from God. We have to be careful now. After all this, I do believe the end is nigh, that the end is near. I do believe it could happen at any time now. Because of my theological positions, I'm not, my brothers who are dispensationalistas, I cannot pronounce it in English. They are waiting for some other signs to take place. We, the ones that are a millennial and historical millennialists, we say no, it's ready. It can happen at any time now. So
Nice. Well, it feels like we're barely scratching the surface here, but we've kind of come to the end of our time window. So in
Yes.
closing, I guess, if a person wanted to learn more, do you have any suggestions for where they could go to dig a little deeper?
One thing that I will recommend anyone interested in this topic is that before jumping into the book of Revelation, to have a good understanding of the Old Testament. That will be the best place. In books like Daniel, mainly Daniel, but then to understand Daniel, you need to understand the prophets and all the other historical books in the Old Testament. But the Old Testament is the place to begin to understand the book of Revelation. And then have a good sense of history, when that book was written, the Revelation, and what was happening. So get your context, and then you can jump into Revelation and get a good idea what it means.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Alex, as usual. Thank you to our listeners. And again, if you've got any suggestions for topics you want us to cover, any comments, whatever, just please let us know. We'd be happy to engage with you.
Thank you.